All right, good afternoon, guys. So we're back with our trade reviews. I've been without Wi-Fi all weekend, Friday through Monday. No Wi-Fi, freaking terrible. Felt like I was in the third world, but we're back, and we had a full day of trading today. Mostly just options. Only did one futures trade, and that was green. Options turned out okay today, but there was a lot of fast movement this morning. There was a lot going on. As far as pre-market analysis is concerned, here were my major pivots, the only ones near. Now, as you can see, I don't really have any. We have one major one down here on both ES and NQ, and a major one up here. Nothing below. I had to manually draw out this demand zone because the demand zone was too far back to see on the 1 minute. But yeah, no other major pivots, and it was because of this that I didn't really have much pre-market bias this morning. I did have a little bit of bias. I said slightly bullish because these demands were stronger demand zones. We had a 2 hour and a 1 hour on both ES and NQ, and ES was currently in the demand. But pretty much my pre-market analysis was very slightly bullish to start. If we explode to the upside in the beginning of the day, then I will take calls to the nearest pivot, which for NQ would be right here. And if we dump, I will likely bet on this demand to break and take puts down here. One thing I didn't see, though, is I didn't see this perfect double bottom this morning for some reason. It wasn't a very big deal. It was a perfect double bottom, and you guys know me. Perfect bottoms and perfect tops, they need to break. This one wasn't a very big deal, though, because those points these aren't major pivot points here, and they aren't very far apart. So it's not a big deal. But this ended up being fairly major, but I didn't notice it until later for whatever reason. But anyways, I told you guys my exact words was, if we shoot up at market open, I'll enter calls for supply break, and if we dump, I'll take the momentum trade for the demand break. Well, I end up entering calls about 20 seconds after market open, as we opened pretty dang bullish, and I took a pretty quick scalp trade on QQQ calls because the Nasdaq was stronger than ES to this high right here. I did leave a very small runner position in, which ended up stopping out. I personally entered those calls at 82 cents. I got over 50% gains, and that was a pretty quick scalp. And stopped out of my runner when it bearishly swept here. Now, at this point is when I know, okay, this is a major pivot, right? So if we come back down, I'll be in, and well, it came back down. Not only was ES weaker than the NASDAQ, not only did it have this nice bottom here, and not only did it invalidate the majority of the bounce already, NQ also put in a bearish liquidity sweep. So similar to the last trade, this trade actually had better odds than the previous trade I just took. So we're up 150% trade right now. I took puts, SPX puts here for this low. And the reason I'm getting it is because this massive red candle. So I told you guys, if this big red candle fully invalidates the body of it, I'll be out of this trade. I was instantly green like 30% on the trade, but unfortunately, this second demand was very strong on ES, and this demand on NQ was very strong, and I ended up stopping out on this candle. Not only did I stop out on this candle, but at this point, I was pretty much re-triggered back into calls. Because now we've, again, invalidated a majority of this drop. ES actually flipped stronger than NQ, so I decided to take a... not a super small call trade, but I decided to take a call trade trying again for this pivot on ES because now we tested the supply twice. Now, I couldn't decide which was stronger. ES initially bounced harder than NQ, and the previous candle was stronger. But NQ looks stronger on this candle. So I entered both SPX and QQQ calls, but half in each. So it was a normal size trade, right? Pretty much every trade was normal size except for the first one. The first one was a little bit lighter, So right now I'm only small green on the day, even though that previous loss was less than 20%. I think that previous loss was like minus 18% or something like that. My first one was 50%, but when I enter right at market open, I'm usually not all the way full size, even if I'm confident. So small green on the day right now. And this is the same trade. It's just a basic liquidity momentum setup. It looked pretty good. I'm bullish for this trend line to break to the upside. And once again, the trade started off green. NQ was a lot more green than ES. Right at the beginning, I was up 20% on each. But then, just like this second demand zone on ES, this second supply zone was magical, and it happened to pretty much perfectly put in 3 points here. So that sucked a lot. So it's 2 green to red trades in a row, and I stopped out right when this buying wick started invalidating. And obviously, I was in. This counts as one trade, but I was in SPX and QQQ contracts, so the percent loss was a little bit different. But I roughly lost like 30% or something. So now I'm light red on the day. Even though total I'm down by like 46%. Like I said, that first trade was a bit lighter because I'm not entering full size right at market open unless it's an insane setup like a perfect bottom or top I'm attacking. So right now I'm light red on the day. Just got hornswoggled twice in a row by supply and demand. Supply and demand. My zones indicator is just deciding to be flawless today for some reason. And I am pretty much about to be triggered back into puts because we're invalidating a majority of this entire bounce. ES is weaker than NQ again. And we have this perfect bottom, and we already kind of tested this area of support down here once. So when this buying wick invalidated, not only did I stop out, but I filled SPX puts a little bit before this candle closed. Now, one thing that I said that's rare for me to say in my channel is I told you guys that I am heavy in this trade. I was heavier in this trade. I was in with 1.25 size, X size, roughly, rough estimate, right? I was heavier than my normal position by a bit. Because this is our second test, ES is weak. It looks freaking beautiful. I gotta be in there like underwear for this one. And if I stop out, so be it. This is getting dangerous though, because the problem is if I stop out, I'm going to have to enter calls again. So this is definitely one of those days to where it's possible for me to just get smoked 4 times in a row. And all of us have those days occasionally. If you don't have those days, you're probably cheating your win rate. And instead, your red days, you probably just blow up everything, even though they're rare. But this is possibly looking like today is going to be a dangerous day if this trade doesn't work out. Because then the next trade I'm going to enter might not work out either. And now I'm just going to take a bunch of losses. But I enter pretty heavy on this. Not super heavy, not over risking or everything. Just there's definitely more sentiment behind it. And it actually worked out. I actually averaged up on this bounce. This bounce had a much bigger buying wick. This was a perfect triple bottom. I added more puts on the bounce, so I was even heavier in this trade, which I did alert my channel, but mostly in voice. And it ended up breaking pretty nicely here, so I took profits on it. That was a really big win. I cleared 60% gains on that, and in that single trade, I made back much more than my losses overall. So that was a big win, and now I'm decently green. Now, this is a bullish liquidity sweep here on ES, in demand, and NQ stronger than ES. You can see it didn't go nearly as far down. I'm eyeballing QQQ calls to high of day when most of this drop invalidates, because that's a pretty bullish liquidity sweep we have on ES. We have demand, we have the liquidity sweep, and we have the volume spike. Looks pretty good. It was still looking good. I just needed this selling wick to invalidate. And it did not. So there end up being 2 more trades that I end up taking. And it was a bit interesting. Definitely on the riskier sides of the trades. And here's what I did. So NQ ended up putting in this little head and shoulders. ES ended up coming back down. This is my only major pivot. And as it stands right now, this is really bearish. This is a bullish trend line all the way up here, which did end up breaking later in the day during the future session. But that's really far away, so it's irrelevant. This is pretty bearish on ES. Tons of momentum. It's still weaker than NQ. I'm very bearish for it to sweep this low. And if it bearishly consolidated, I would love to enter puts. Well, it ended up missing that pivot. And as a result of missing the pivot, I took a much riskier trade. It wasn't full size because it was definitely riskier. But I said I'm entering SPX puts on this bounce. It's risky though. Half size planning to add. I'll average up if this bounce invalidates. I only averaged up to a little bit. Not really though. It stayed kind of a smaller trade. I filled on this bounce. SPX puts going for this low. Once I started putting in this selling wick, I really liked it. Looking back on this trade, this is definitely more of an aggressive trade. But you guys know how the mornings have been lately. Mornings have been trending really hard lately. And I'm hypothesizing that this morning will be very similar. So this is the trade that I took. But things got interesting right after I entered this. NQ was very strong. It attempted to break to the upside. But one interesting thing that happened is, you guys know that I'm pretty bullish or bearish for perfect double bottoms and double tops to break, and triple and quadruple, so on and so forth. One interesting thing is NQ put in a perfect 3-point touch trend line. I don't know if I can draw it perfectly like I did live, but it's a perfect 3-point touch trend line. I am bullish for this trend line to break. And I said in the off chance, I was fully expecting this to break to the upside while I'm in this trade, and that would be a good average down opportunity for bearish consolidation to take a bear pennant or a bear flag to this break. However, what I told you guys on my channel is if somehow, some way, ES gets to this pivot before NQ breaks the trend line, not only will I take profits on my SPX puts, but I'll be entering QQQ calls right there at the, hopefully, the bottom. Because you can also see that this is a gorgeous falling wedge forming. And I'll be betting that this ends up becoming a bullish liquidity sweep, and we end up getting a break to the upside. But my trade would only be to the trendline break or sweep. Right now, this trend line is perfect. I will be selling once it becomes imperfect, which means if it just breaks to the upside right here, I'm selling right here. That's when the average retail trader is going to enter. This is a beautiful falling wedge. I know every retail trader and their mother's probably going to enter right here. I plan on selling right there. So that's the grand plan, but I doubt I'm going to get that lucky. But for once, I actually did get that lucky. This trend line did not break to the upside, and ES got my PT. So I sold ES right here. They chopped, the SPX puts chopped a bunch, so I only got 20% gains, but it's right on this candle. I entered the QQQ calls and called it out to you guys. So I filled the QQQ calls here for a bounce out of demand on QQQ to break this trend line in a bullish liquidity sweep. And the PT is kind of irrelevant. And I did because I'm just looking for the trend line break. And sure enough, it freaking did it. It was glorious. I sold on this bounce and got 45% gains in one single candle. And that's kind of how it goes with options. If you enter something at the very bottom, the IV will end up doing its thing. We did end up going back up, but those two trades were freaking beautiful. It did go down a bit, get to the next pivot, and then we ended up going back up during the future session. But this was freaking beautiful. Beautiful exit. Everything was beautiful about it. And I actually ended up finishing today's options fairly bright green. I had two losses for minus 16%, then roughly minus 30%. But my wins were plus 56%, plus 68%. That plus 68% trade, which I averaged roughly 60% on, that was a heavy trade. So that trade was weighted way more heavily than the other one. So that skewed my results a bunch. So plus 56, plus 68, which was heavy, and then plus 20%, and then plus 45%. was a pretty dang good day. And this trade was looking back on it, all the trades were fine. This trade was definitely by far the riskiest trade and the most aggressive. But I'm glad it worked out, and I got really lucky with this knife catch opportunity here with this perfect trend line. It's very rare that I see perfect trend lines, and when I do, it's even rarer that I'm able to capitalize on them and make some money off them. So it's really nice today. But that's pretty much what went down this morning. Lots of action. I mean, we had 6 trades, or I had 6 trades at least, and yeah, ended up being pretty decent. Lots of fast movement though. These candles were huge. I mean, you can kind of tell they're big on futures, but I mean, if you're trading futures, this is a 45 tick candle. If you count the wicks, I mean, this is a 70 tick candle on ES, which is almost $1,000 per mini. Like, it doesn't seem like it was moving a lot, but we've been moving a lot lately with all the Iran stuff. Yesterday we shot up massively, which unfortunately I had to miss out on. I only had to cut a scalp on futures on my phone. But the market's been moving a lot. And sometimes it's really hard for me to keep up with the alerts. So you guys know what I enter. Every single day I enter 0 days, either SPX or QQQ. What determines which one I enter? Just whichever one's stronger or weaker, right? Puts, I'm going to enter whichever one's weaker. Calls, I'm going to enter whichever one's stronger. It's always 0 days, and I always enter the contracts between like $2.40 and $3 on SPX, and between like 50 cents and 80-ish cents on QQQ. It's where I'm always at. So when I tell you guys I plan on entering calls if this happens, you guys should already know what calls I'm going to enter, because I trade the same thing every single day, day in and day out for years now. My channel, with all the information in the TA and the pre-market analysis, it's more so intended to give you guys enough information that if you want to, you're actually able to trade alongside me rather than behind me just waiting for a entry. And a lot of these trades this morning, it was impossible for me to type out the whole contract. All I can do is type inputs or in calls, and then I'll fill out the contract later. Uzman says, why was it bullish pre-market when everything was so negative? What do you mean negative? Never mind, he's not even in here. I asked a question and dipped. He was in here right at the beginning and then left right away. So I'm not going to answer that. But it wasn't so bullish. It was just most of the move invalidated. I had a very defined pivot. If I have liquidity momentum and ES or NQ has a major strength divergence, in the opening 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes, I'm usually going to be in calls for that to continue to the nearest pivot, or in puts for it to continue to the nearest pivot. That's typically what I'm going to do. Price action has a strong tendency of chasing the nearest point of liquidity, especially in the first hour of price action. So, all right, but does anyone have any more questions regarding any of the analysis that happened this morning? And then we also have that Trade Arena beta testing session tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And for all you freebies that are in here or listening on YouTube, typically I do my free week the first week of each new month. This is the first week, but this isn't a full week for me. I missed Monday and I also missed Friday, so I want to catch up with my premium people. So next week we'll do the YouTube live stream on top of the usual everyday live stream on Discord for my options and futures trading. So that'll happen next week. All right, doesn't look like anyone has a question. So you guys have a blessed rest of your day if I don't talk to you again. And we'll be back at it bright and early tomorrow morning for hopefully a less chaotic morning. Ideally less trades, and just hopefully the market gives me more time to at least type, because I hate mornings when I'm just struggling to trade and type at the same time like this morning. But not a bad first day back. I'm pretty happy with the results as far as P&L goes. So we'll see what happens. But all right, I'll see you guys later. I'll let you guys know when this is posted on YouTube.